Hi, I'm Dr. Sharon DeVivo, president of Vaughn College, now in our 90th year, and host of our podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Through unscripted, honest conversations with prominent industry leaders, students, faculty, and alumni, we will explore diversity, equity, and inclusion in education and employment, and the forces that drive personal and career growth. Let's dive in. We're so excited today to have Kirei Watson. She graduated from Vaughn College in 2018 and has been working as a mechanical engineer for the past 3 years at Collins Aerospace, a job she got not long after graduation, one of the world's largest suppliers of aerospace and defense products. And I am so excited to see you because I don't think I've seen you since you graduated, Kirei.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's been so long. Like, wow. Time is really flying by. It's crazy. It's so
Yeah, a
crazy.
little pandemic helps, right? It makes
Yeah,
the
I
time
know.
go quick.
Pandemic shortened the time frame. It doesn't feel that long, but it's been that
Yeah,
long.
absolutely. So you're in a very wonderful location. Tell us where you are and what you're doing with Collins right now.
I am currently in San Diego, so Southern California, which is really nice. A little bit different. Everyone's nice compared to New York. Um, but I'm currently here for work. So I'm in the engineering rotational program. And it's an opportunity my company provides to young engineers within 1 to 3 years within the company to travel and try different engineering roles throughout the company. So it goes from within America and also globally too. So we have a lot of different business units from aerostructures to power and controls. So I just been jumping around from Connecticut to California now. Yeah.
And what's been your favorite rotation so far?
Well, this is my first rotation,
Okay.
so I'm a little bit biased. um, this one has been really interesting. So I originally was a design engineer with Pratt and Whitney Engine Systems. So I did like classified information for military engines and doing additive manufacturing design for heat exchangers. And now I'm transitioning over to aerostructures, which is the nacelles and the fan cowls for Airbus, so the A220s. So I'm doing more of a program management role right now, where we're like oversighting and doing sustaining engineering, seeing like cost reductions with certain things and engineering changes. So it's a little bit more of a higher perspective on the program and helping out on how to, budget and reduce costs in that way. So it's pretty different compared to what I started doing.
That's great. Are you
Yeah.
having fun? You enjoying it?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the different perspectives and thinking from the perspective of the customer. So like
Mhm.
Airbus and Embraer are our customers, and so what would the customer want in regards to this cost reduction, and how can we accommodate them while still, internally addressing things that need to be addressed? So it's pretty interesting, like having all these different types of perspective at one time, and how
Oh,
to,
that's terrific.
allocate accordingly. Yeah.
So let's go back. So let's go back in time.
It starts when I was younger. So, like, I've always been obsessed with earth science and just how the atmosphere works, the stratosphere, all the stuff like that. And I came across Vaughan College because I wanted to be a pilot initially. And so there was an open house when I was in high school. And I went and I'm like, I'm going to Vaughan College. Like, I was adamant about it. And so I met a pilot. And so I was actually stuck between aeronautical engineering. So I have my associates from Vaughan with aeronautical engineering to test it out, and so initially, I'm like, I went to a pilot. I was like, I'm stuck. I don't know what I want to do. Should I be a pilot or should I be an engineer? And he was like, he convinced me, basically told me, you should do engineering, like, do it. And I'm like, okay, if a pilot is telling me this, then possibly. So initially, I knew I wanted to go to Vaughan because of the aviation world and my obsession with earth science and transitioning over. So I getting my feet wet with the associates in aeronautical engineering and decided to stay to do mechanical.
So the dream job was to be a pilot.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. That's
It
that.
was to
You
be
know,
in the skies.
that's so. I hear that story a lot. Right. That's the dream that brings people in, and then for whatever reason, flight isn't the direction they decide to go for lots of different reasons.
Yeah,
But they still want to be around it, right? They want to be engaged in it.
yeah,
They want to have a hand in it. So I'm assuming because the field is not predominantly women. In fact, it's the exact opposite, and that
yeah.
has been true at Vaughn for a long time as well. What's it been? What was it like to be, probably, either the only or one or two people in a class that were female. And then I'm sure you're finding that the same at Collins,
Yeah.
and a person of color at Collins as well.
Yeah, it's so funny. Ironically, initially when I started at Vaughn, it was like a pre-calc class, so it wasn't even an engineering-based class. But I was like the only female, and it hit me, a freshman, like, dang, this is what the trajectory of my career is going to look like. I don't know why. I was like 18, no, I was probably 17, and I'm like, oh wow, this is going to be my reality. But gradually, like, I think one thing that really drives me is my passion and my obsession. I love math. I love science. Give me an equation. I love calculus. So like that passion that I have for being analytical and just finding out why things work and how they work is really what drove me. So being in a classroom where like at Vaughn is very diverse, even though I was the only female, it's just race wise, ethnicity wise, there's so many people that just because it's in New York. And so because of that, I never really felt like the other. um, and also I think engineering really does, it's a tech major, so it brings people together in regards to innovation and ideas and what can you bring to the table academically. And because of that environment, it's just so beautiful that you're able to bring what your perspective is and not feel like, ostracized, or it's like, okay, let's build on that. Okay, like so study sessions at Vaughn, like in the library during finals week, it's just like a bunch of people studying, going at it, and it's just like it's an amazing feeling to be able to be in a field where it's like I'm actually contributing to something technically, and
Yeah.
and also even at work too. That's how I also felt or feel right now too.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, diversity is definitely Vaughn's superpower, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it's one of the things that makes us a really special place,
It
and that
is.
diversity of thought and different perspectives is terrific. And it's so interesting. There's been studies that have been done about why women are drawn to engineering, and it's not
Hmm.
for the equipment, right? To work on the
Yeah.
multi-million dollar piece of equipment. It's about being able to change the world, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what it sounds like is really your driving passion as well. Um, so I know because we had conversations about it, you were very involved in the National Society of Black Engineers. Um, in fact, were you the president? You were exactly one of the
Yeah.
officers. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
you went to some of their conferences, right?
Yeah.
And, and what's the atmosphere like at a NASB conference? And how did that contribute to where you are now?
Initially, I was overwhelmed. I was so used to being the only person of color or the only woman, like doing engineering. And so when I went to like three different conferences, and I started like one of the founding presidents for at Vaughn, and so I was very adamant about going to this conference. I'm like, we're going to get there. Come on, team, let's go. And so when we first got there, it was overwhelming for me initially because I'm just like all these schools from all over the country at this conference for job opportunities. And then you have these big companies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon at the time, United Technologies before they, united and merged, but L3 Harris. And so all these major companies and people have the resumes and it's initial recruitment and all this stuff is happening. And I was like, whoa, we are underprepared. And so just from that initial conference, just building on that, especially within our chapter on how we can prepare, having mock interviews, teaming up with chefs, teaming up with SWE. It was very much it's like, okay, now there's a transition. There's like professional side of what we're doing, and how to prepare ourselves for that was definitely my end goal, and trying to focus on that too. So Nesby conference was very insightful overall because it gives you an insight like, okay, there's other people like me, and also there's other people like working towards getting into the aerospace companies or the very technical companies, automotive, Toyota. And
Yeah.
so it was very helpful overall. Yeah.
Now, did you find Collins at the NASB conference?
No, so it was at
Okay.
SHEP. Yeah.
Oh, the
Um,
Society for Hispanic Professional
yeah,
Engineers.
Hispanic professional engineers. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean
So
that's been one of our winning strategies is to have students go to those professional conferences and make incredible connections,
yeah.
especially to those companies outside of strictly sort of aviation, like you
Hmm.
mentioned automotive. because they're not thinking about Vaughn as a place for that, but students are
Yeah.
thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so I mean, those conferences, it sounds like for you, that conference was really inspirational and motivational. And in the case of the SHIP conference, really got you to Collins. So, what is it about Collins that attracted you? Why did you want to work for them?
It sounds so cliche. Aviation. But
That's okay.
but honestly, it's the opportunity to make innovation. So like Collins Aerospace slogan is everything but the engine. And so that's basically what Collins Aerospace does, like everything but the engine. So from interiors to seating for airlines, and it's like all within this one company. And so being able to be a part of that and having the opportunity to, transition over to different roles and different parts of the aircraft was what initially struck out to me. So my initial role where I did heat exchangers and I worked hand in hand with Pratt and Whitney and how to accommodate a component and design it and that aspect of it and the engine conditions and doing lab testing, and it was really amazing to have that exposure to the engine and how our part like helps out with the engine and how we can do performance, improve performance. So it's Collins Aerospace was a no brainer. Yeah, I love aviation. I love
Well, you could
planes.
tell. You could tell
Yeah,
as you rattle these things off that you're very passionate about, what
yeah.
you do and about working for Collins, which is terrific. And thinking about the role that you're in right now, how do you think your college experience helped prepare you for it? And or were there element? I mean, clearly NSBE was a significant piece of this, but in
Mhm.
terms of your coursework, what were the pieces that you're finding you've drawn on in the last few
Yeah,
years?
I don't initially just what struck in my head was Khalid, Professor Khalid, and he used to always say garbage in equals garbage out, and so with equations and whatever you do, be very thorough, be very intentional about what you're studying, and so what I do now, it's definitely the same thing, making sure that you're accurately communicating with everyone, whether it's a presentation, what you're doing, your process, how did you get to that point, your step by step process, so that I think honestly for me now, especially like design reviews or anything like that, the biggest takeaway is when there's no questions and everyone gets the message that's being portrayed. And so in the room when I'm speaking to anything that's technical and everybody's okay, I get it, cool, awesome, and I'm like, okay, I did a
Nice.
good great job. I did a
Yeah,
great job.
that must feel
So
good.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what Vaughn taught me. Vaughn taught me how to be thorough with my process, how to
Mhm.
also explain the process I went through, whether it's in a report or just anything like that too. So definitely being thorough and knowing how to do that step by step process is very helpful.
Terrific. So what's the goal? You're doing the rotational program right now, so you'll get a sense. Now, once you've been through all the rotations, do you get a chance to say, okay, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
any idea yet? I mean, you're just
Yeah,
starting, but
so the thing about this rotational program, you're not given an assignment or a rotation, you pick it yourself. So it's up to you to reach out to
ah,
executives. You have an
okay.
executive mentor within the company who will actually help you guide you on the steps of where you want to go. But so initially for me, how I'm going about this rotational program, since it's all on me, is really where's my outplacement where I want to be. And so for me, it's a program chief engineer, so working on different programs, and having all the working pieces within the integrated team, from manufacturing to project to design, having that high level overview for the program and also interacting with the customers where I want to be. That's my end goal. Um, so right now I'm currently doing like a customer focus, program management focus, possibly do some systems exposure and other project exposure. But being more technical is really where I'm at right now too, and also I'm in grad school, so it's really helpful. Yeah.
Oh, terrific. What are you studying? What's your
I'm
master's
doing
in?
mechanical engineering for my master's. So I go to Worcester Polytechnic Institute
Oh,
in
sure. Yeah.
Massachusetts.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
WPI. So I currently go to WPI online right now since I'm in California, but
Right.
yeah, I'm planning to
Oh, that's
graduate next
terrific.
year.
So, I mean, where do you see Collins headed in the next few years? Where's the future for Collins Aerospace in terms of aviation? Are they getting involved in, say, eVTOLs or any of those spaces? Where's it headed?
Honestly, when I can speak in regards to additive manufacturing, so definitely working hand in hand with additive
Mm-hmm.
and advancement. We currently received like the Guinness World Record for the longest additive part made
Oh wow.
within our team. It took like, I think it was like 4 days for it to be printed. So it's very complex geometry that's going on and a lot of technical development happening in regards to material components and how
Mm-hmm.
to transition that. So right now I can like speak to like other things that we're working on with the nacelles as well, being on that program and other things that we're currently doing with that. So definitely the future Collins Aerospace is performance and
Yeah.
also cost reduction. So with additive manufacturing, it's cost reduction, but also, reaching certain performance that couldn't be reached before. And
Right.
so just seeing that aspect of it is like simultaneously addressing both sides of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's very
Yeah.
interesting in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. This idea of somebody walking up to a parts shop and going, I need one of those, and it's not on a shelf, and somebody says, "Come back in 2 hours, and I'll give you the part." Right? This
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
idea of just in time. Um, yeah, that's terrific. I mean, there's been so many advances in additive and subtractive manufacturing in the last few years. It is really
Yeah.
changing the landscape of aviation for sure.
It is.
Um,
It definitely is.
yeah, terrific. Um, so, if you were talking to either yourself or an aspiring female student who wants to be an engineer and is just starting to think about, where am I going to go to school and, what should I study? What kind of advice would you give her?
First of all, I feel like Vaughn College was a great environment because it was small and intimate. And just having that ability to go to professors or just knowing that you have questions was amazing. My advice to a young female engineer is just do it. Let the passion drive you. Um, and so, honestly, like having tunnel vision, because there are people that will try to feel like you don't belong. And it's reality in this world that we're living in. But at the same time, not letting that get to where you want to go and letting that determine what your dream is, like letting that be your drive, is definitely my biggest advice. Letting that be your drive. That's all I can really say is like that's what carries me, honestly, is like I am adamant about what I do, and so letting others dictate what I want to do is something I just know. Yeah.
Well, you're very self-motivated, Kirei. I mean, but
Thank
who's in
you.
that support network for you?
Mentors.
Oh, really? Okay.
um,
And how did you
yeah.
find them? How did you find them?
So my mentors are people within my company right now, and also other
Okay.
people outside of my company. So there's people I've met, especially at conferences, that will put me on the signs like this is great, you're amazing. But
Right.
this resume is a little bit off, so here you should work on this and like follow up with them. Like I had a mentor from General Motors, Rockwell Automation. Like there's a lot of people that actually just pulled me aside and actually helped me professionally, and I'm just so grateful for them too because I wouldn't be here for that.
Right.
So for me, my mentors currently within my company, I reach out to them. So there are people who I actually
Mhm.
want to emulate within the room. So there are people that I look at and how they show up, and I'm just like, wow, that's amazing. What you do is amazing. How you show up is amazing. And so I
Yeah.
was like, I just want some insight. Is it possible we can schedule a one-on-one session or just a biweekly tag up where I can get some feedback from you in regards to what I'm doing and things like that. And so that's been taking me very far because I have a lot of a lot of people that are really allies and helping me.
Mhm. So, yeah, it sounds like you have to be really intentional about it, right? It can't be sort of, well, if I find somebody and we sort of connect. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you're actually treating that aspect of your job like part of your job. It's not just an add-on, it's a part of who you are and how you conduct yourself to make real headway. That's a great tip for other people who are thinking about their careers or just getting started, is to be as intentional about it as you've been, because it's clearly leading you to really good places and lots of growth. It's kind of that growth mindset, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing, being honest, is like being a Black woman in this company, there's a statistic that sticks in my head all the time. So there's currently 15,000 engineers within our company. And out of the 15,000, only 322 are Black women. And yeah, that number 322 just sticks in my head all the time. And I don't know, just that reality is like, oh, wow. and also I don't have any family to reference or anything like that. So I have to reach out to people. I have to say, and put my pride aside and just like, I appreciate what you're doing and you seem very insightful. Can you help me out? And so oftentimes I get yes and people willing to invest in me. So it's really amazing having that.
Well, what is so cool about what you're talking about is, so often, you have to see it to be it, right? And
Mm,
the challenge for you right now is I'm not so sure you can see it, right? I mean, how many black women are there in leadership positions
very
above
few.
you, right? I mean, if you're
Yeah.
telling me out of 15,000 there's only 300, right? Then that means you're forging the path yourself. Right? So
Yeah.
do you think about the and look, you're young, you don't have to take on this responsibility, but do you think about the women coming behind you?
Yeah, ironically, this past year I've met with like 2 to 3 young female engineers that reach out to me and they're like, "Oh yeah, I came across your LinkedIn. Can you help me with this?" Or like, I'm indecisive about this engineering thing. What about this or what about that? And honestly, I give them the real I'm like, yeah, it's not easy, but at the same time, it's so rewarding and it's really about your passion. So if you want to do this, do it. Like I think it's being hesitant, like, oh, I don't know if I should or should not. Um, I no, I have to be invested fully. I have to. Yeah.
So how do you get through those moments, Kiri? How do you, when you're surrounded by a bunch of old white people,
Yeah.
who are trying to tell you this is the way it is, or this is the way we've always done it, or
Mm,
not open to a diversity of ideas. How do
mm.
you stay motivated? How do you stay so positive?
Yeah, initially, honestly, within my first team, I'm so grateful for my first team. First of all, they're so amazing. When you walk in a room, it's like, wait, no one looks like me. And at least at Vaughn, it was like there are people of color, like Hispanics, Asians, and so there was a little level to relate, and also being in New York, but going to Connecticut, the suburbs where everyone is a middle-aged white male. Walking, it was very intimidating. Imposter syndrome was real. But honestly, my team did cultivate a space of belonging for me. It was I'm so grateful for that because it's like, okay, Kira, here's like, what do you think about this? Or involving me in the conversation. Even outside of work, having get togethers, initially coming on, they all had a lunch for me. It was definitely a sense of, okay, they do want me here.
Yeah,
Sounds kind of crazy, but when you're the only one in the room, you start to question a lot.
sure.
And so because of that exposure or that team, I was able to just now I show up in a lot of places where it's like, okay, I'm not intimidated. What I have to offer is what I have to offer. And I think another thing is the interview process and the process to get into the room
Yeah,
is
right.
very extensive, right? And so because of that, it's like you belong here. You do. You went through the process like anybody else, everybody
Mhm.
else, and the selective process in order to get like even within this rotational program, I think it was like a 3-step interview. And it was very intense, but because of like, it's like, yes, I belong here. My application sticks out. And so
Mhm.
ironically, the role that I end up getting initially within Collins, I didn't interview for. Um, so it was really great. So,
That's awesome. So, let's say you have to interview for another job at Collins, or you decide you're going to go someplace else.
mhm.
What are the things you have learned? Because Collins, it sounds like, was so good about creating this sense of belonging. Is there a way for you to now test out if that opportunity is always going to be there and that you don't have to worry about that piece? How do you know what are the things that you're looking for from companies to know that it's a good place to work, it's a place that appreciates a diversity of thought and viewpoints?
Mm, that part, diversity of thought and
Yeah.
viewpoints. I feel like there's times where I've been on interviews and it feels like you're challenging me because of how I look, and rather than
Mhm.
my exposure and experience. And so
Yeah.
the way I gauge it is like, okay, yeah, no, I don't even. I'm very sensitive about culture, and if I feel like I
Yeah.
have to break or do additional work to break barriers or try to break down like, hey, what I have to provide is very insightful, or I can provide something that can help the team along, and so the way I gauge that is just based on just an initial, meeting up, or just a
Mhm.
conversation where it feels like I have to overproduce or try to prove that I'm worthy of being here, when I've proven
Mhm.
multiple times that I'm worthy of being here based on my
Yeah.
resume, based on the things that I've done. And so that's really how I gauge it. And there are
Yeah.
people who would challenge, like, okay, you're challenging me not because of what I've done, but you're just challenging me to see if I'm able to do this, which
Yeah.
is because of how I look. And it's not. I get
Mhm.
the aspect of, let's see if you're capable of doing this job in this
Oh,
role.
sure. Yeah.
And then
Right.
there's another aspect where it's like, are you, as
Yeah.
you,
Right.
capable of doing this
Right.
job in this role?
So
And
I mean, just to follow that for a second. So you can really tell that fast. It'll really be that evident that quickly.
not that fast, but
Okay.
as you progress on in the interview, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I see the
Yeah.
danger zone, or I
Right.
noticed this microaggression,
Right.
and noticing that is like, okay. But at
Yeah.
the same time, encountering that, yes, but it's also, how badly do you want that role? How badly do you want to be in that position too?
Oh, yeah,
So
but then you don't wanna have to take on the burden of educating the
yeah,
people that you work with, right?
very true.
Yeah. Aw. Well,
Mhm.
that's great. I mean, tip for all those companies out there listening, make sure your interviewers and your culture align with your values, right? If you
Yeah,
say this is what you value, then make sure that your interviewers don't bring implicit bias to the
yeah,
interview, because those folks may not even been aware that they were doing
yeah,
it. Not to take them
exactly.
off the hook, but right, awareness is the first step. And also be really sensitive to the culture of your workplaces. Make
Mhm.
sure that they're inclusive and equitable, right?
Yeah,
And it's a marathon we never finish, right? You may think, oh, we did that training, all done. That's not how it works. I wish that's
yeah.
how it worked, but that's not how it works. Um,
Yeah, diversity and inclusion is definitely an active thing. It's more than just a training.
right.
And also just being sensitive to the other person. Thing is just seeing
Yeah.
the other person as a person too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, one question that I'm asking everybody
Yeah.
during these conversations is what is the most daring thing you've ever done, and how did you talk yourself into it? Which doesn't seem like that would be a problem for you, Kirei.
Yeah. For me, the most daring thing I ever done was skydive. Um,
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, I went skydiving. It was so fun. It was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania too. So I traveled with a friend, and I was fine the entire time. So I'm like, I signed up, signed a waiver of like, you might die, and if you die, it's not on us. And so I'm like, okay, cool. I was fine even to that point. And walking towards the plane, I'm fine. And then my instructor, like, you harness next to him or he's behind you. And so as we're ascending, he's showing me his altitude watch, and he's like, okay, there we go. 10,000 feet.
Jeez. Jeez. That
And
set in?
that's when it starts to kick in. And I'm looking out the window as we're ascending. I'm like, oh wow, I'm about to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And I'm like, okay, I got this. And I went with my friend, so she jumped before me. And so I see her just like flip,
Oh, no. Yeah.
and that's when it hits me, like the clouds, the whole scene. And
Yeah.
she just like jumps out and just starts. And then it's my turn, and they give you this entire instruction on how to jump out of the plane. You're supposed to nail and do this whole thing.
Right.
It all left me as soon as
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez.
as soon as I looked out the door and I was like, that's when it hit
Yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
he's like, bend your knees. He's yelling at me. So that was the most daring thing I've done. But yeah, it was also fun. It's very nice.
Oh, you must have felt like Superwoman when you got on the ground.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. You realize
Yeah.
how small, like from that view, everything looks so small. and it's
Yeah.
really
Oh,
nice.
that's amazing. I don't think anybody's going to top that one, Kirei.
We'll see.
That's terrific. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was great to catch up with you.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
love hearing about where graduates have landed and how their careers are going, and so I hope you stay connected to your alma mater. And we'd love to have you back on campus anytime you're in the area.
Yeah,
I think current students, would really benefit from your experience and what you've learned at Collins Aerospace. So thank you so much for being here.
yeah,
All
thank
right,
you.
so. Oh yeah, no, it was a great conversation.
Mhm.
All right, so Vaughn's future proof tip of the month. Well, I mean, this one's, I'm sure everybody listening and watching could get this one. Break barriers and follow your dreams for sure. And I think it was, Kirei's really forging new pathways, and you know, it's amazing to see you and you're just to be commended for the extra that you take on as the first in many cases. So yeah, and it's never too early to start preparing for your career. If we have any students out there, you heard Kirei talk about math. that's one place where we want to make sure we're paying attention, because it definitely has a lot to do with being an awesome engineer. Have a question? Email us at futureprooffocus@vaughn.edu. And don't forget to subscribe, follow, and rate the podcast. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.